guess. And then he died 8 months later, and I didn't see him for those 8 months. We spoke on the phone, but I didn't see him. And he really had deteriorated it a lot.
Have you ever wondered if Elvis Presley's heart ever truly moved on from Priscilla? He was the king of rock and roll, a man adored by millions. Yet behind the dazzling lights and roaring crowds, there was a story rarely told. A story of love loss and lingering emotion. What if I told you that even after his high-profile divorce from Priscilla Presley, there was an unspoken connection that never truly faded? And what if someone close to him, someone who loved him deeply, was forced to face the truth about his divided heart? This is the story of Linda Thompson, the woman who stood by Elvis's side during some of the most challenging years of his life. Their love was real, passionate, and deeply connected, but there was always something lingering in the shadow, the ghost of Priscilla. For years, Linda saw signs that told her Elvis's past wasn't entirely in the past. She accepted them. She loved him despite them. But one moment, one unexpected confession changed everything she thought she understood about their relationship. In this video, we uncover that hidden moment, the words Elvis spoke to Linda that proved his love for Priscilla never truly left. To understand the depth of Elvis's emotions, we need to first understand the woman who shared his world after Priscilla, Linda Thompson. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, Linda wasn't just another admirer of Elvis. She was a beauty queen, crowned Miss Tennessee in 1972, and had an undeniable charm that captivated those around her. But her life changed forever when she crossed paths with the biggest icon in music history. It was a summer night in 1972 when Linda was invited to a private gathering at the Memphian Theater, a place Elvis often rented out to watch movies with his inner circle. When their eyes met for the first time, there was an instant spark. Elvis, still recovering from his divorce, was drawn to Linda's warmth and kindness. She wasn't just beautiful, she had a gentle soul, a comforting presence, something he desperately needed. From that night on, their relationship blossomed. She became more than a girlfriend, she was his emotional anchor. She accompanied him on tours, stayed at Graceland, and experienced the whirlwind lifestyle of a rock and roll legend. But beyond the private jets and luxurious nights at Graceland, there was a truth Linda couldn't ignore. She soon realized that being with Elvis meant sharing him with his past. And no matter how deeply he cared for her, the presence of Priscilla Presley loomed over their relationship like a shadow. And it wasn't just about co-parenting Lisa Marie, it was something more, something deeper. It wasn't until one particular request from Elvis that Linda finally saw it for what it truly was. And that moment, it changed everything. For the outside world, Elvis Presley was the king, a larger-than-life figure draped in rhinestone-studded jumpsuits, adored by millions. But behind closed doors, he was a man struggling with loneliness, insecurities, and the weight of his own legacy. And Linda Thompson? She became his rock. She wasn't just another girlfriend in a long line of admirers, she was the woman who cared for him when the curtains closed, when the spotlights faded, when the crowds disappeared. From the very start, Linda realized that being with Elvis meant far more than just romance. It meant understanding his pain, his past, and his emotional wounds. She traveled with him everywhere, on tour, to Las Vegas, and of course back to Graceland. She saw his struggles with health, his dependence on prescription medications, and his emotional highs and lows. She took care of him in ways few ever could. But there was one thing Linda couldn't take away, the hold that Priscilla still had on his heart. Even though their marriage had officially ended in 1973, Elvis and Priscilla remained deeply connected. And it wasn't just because of their daughter, Lisa Marie. There were moments, whispers, glances that told Linda something she didn't want to admit. Elvis still had lingering feelings for his ex-wife. It wasn't just in the way he talked about Priscilla, it was in the way he held on to things from their past, reminisced about their time together, and reacted whenever Priscilla's name came up. At first, Linda brushed it off. She told herself that it was natural. They had a child together after all. But then came the night when Elvis made a request so personal, so revealing that it shattered every illusion Linda had about where she truly stood in his heart. Was it love, or was it unfinished business? The bond between Elvis and Priscilla Presley was complicated. Though their marriage had officially ended, something undeniable still tied them together. Linda had always known that Elvis and Priscilla shared a history that no one could erase, but she didn't expect to see just how deep that connection still ran. Elvis spoke of Priscilla often, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with frustration, but always with emotion. He would talk about their early years, about Graceland's happiest moments, about the way Priscilla used to laugh, the way she understood him. There was a softness in his voice whenever he mentioned her. But what truly opened Linda's eyes was Priscilla's presence in his life. Even after their divorce, Priscilla would visit Graceland. She and Elvis would have private conversations, ones that Linda was never invited into. There were moments when Linda felt like an outsider looking in, standing in the shadow of a love story that had never fully ended. And then came the moment that changed everything. One night, as Linda prepared for an evening out with Elvis, she reached for a beautiful bracelet, a gift he had given her. But as soon as Elvis saw it on her wrist, his expression changed, and what he said next left Linda questioning everything. Linda had dressed carefully that evening, selecting an elegant outfit and finishing her look with a bracelet that Elvis had given her, a stunning piece of jewelry shimmering under the light. But when Elvis noticed it, his face changed. His usual playful charm faded into something more serious. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Don't wear that," he said, his voice softer than usual. Linda frowned, confused. It was a gift from him. Why would he ask her not to wear it? "Why?" she asked, searching his face for an answer. Elvis exhaled and ran a hand through his hair as if debating whether to tell her the truth. "Because I gave one just like it to Priscilla," he finally admitted. The words hit Linda like a wave. She had always known that Priscilla was a part of Elvis's past, but at that moment she realized something deeper. Priscilla wasn't just his past. She was still a part of him. It wasn't just about a bracelet. It was about what it represented. Elvis didn't want Linda wearing something that reminded him of Priscilla. It was as if the sight of it was too much for him to bear. Linda felt a sting of realization. No matter how much Elvis loved her, no matter how deeply she cared for him, there was a piece of him that would forever belong to Priscilla. She didn't argue. She simply removed the bracelet and placed it back in its box. But in her heart, she knew things would never feel the same again. Up until that moment, Linda had only heard about Priscilla from Elvis and his circle. But when she finally met her in person, it was a moment she would never forget. It happened at Elvis's home in California, a casual gathering where Priscilla arrived with their daughter, Lisa Marie. Linda felt a nervous tension in the air, an unspoken understanding between two women who had loved the same man. When Priscilla walked in, she was composed, graceful, carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had once stood exactly where Linda was standing now. She wasn't cold, she wasn't rude. In fact, she was polite, even warm. But there was something in her eyes, something Linda couldn't quite describe. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't resentment, it was understanding. Linda realized that Priscilla knew exactly what it meant to love Elvis. She had been there, she had lived it, and now she was watching someone else step into the same whirlwind. The conversation was pleasant, even friendly, but there was an unspoken truth between them. No matter how different their roles were now, they were forever connected through Elvis. As Priscilla left that evening, Linda felt a strange mix of emotions. She had met the woman who had once been Elvis's greatest love, and yet in that moment, she couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her still was. What Linda didn't realize was that Priscilla had her own feelings about the situation, and the next time they would cross paths, it wouldn't be so easy, because it was Lisa Marie, Elvis's daughter, who would unknowingly reveal the truth about how Priscilla really felt. Children have a way of speaking the truth without realizing the weight of their words. And for Linda, it was Lisa Marie's innocent remark that revealed what Priscilla really thought about her. It happened on a quiet afternoon at Graceland. Linda had grown close to Lisa, treating her with kindness and love whenever she visited. She never wanted the little girl to feel like she was caught in the middle of something complicated. But children pick up on things. That day, as they sat together, Lisa Marie looked up at Linda with her bright, curious eyes and said something that made her heart stop. "My mommy doesn't like you." Linda blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She tried to keep her expression neutral. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Lisa shrugged, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "She just doesn't." There was no malice in Lisa's voice, just honesty. Linda felt a strange sensation creeping over her. Up until now, she had assumed that Priscilla saw her as just another chapter in Elvis's life, but now she realized something different. Priscilla might have been graceful and polite in person, but behind closed doors, she harbored feelings about Linda that she had kept hidden. Was it resentment? Was it protectiveness? Or was it something deeper, a lingering pain from a love that had never fully faded? Linda knew that Elvis and Priscilla's relationship was complicated, but this was the first time she felt the weight of it in her own life. Lisa, unaware of the impact her words had made, continued playing as if nothing had happened. But for Linda, everything had changed, because now she knew that Priscilla still cared. And when a love as powerful as the one she and Elvis had shared refuses to die, what does that mean for the woman who came after? The deeper Linda fell into Elvis's world, the more she realized he was a man of contradictions. He loved fiercely, yet he struggled to let go. He sought comfort in the present, yet he lived in the past. His relationship with Priscilla was over, yet she never truly left his heart. Linda had seen it firsthand. The way he reacted when Priscilla was mentioned, the way he spoke about their memories together. And now, thanks to Lisa Marie, she knew that Priscilla wasn't indifferent to him either. But where did that leave Linda? She had given Elvis her heart. She had stood by his side through the highs and lows, the chaotic tours, the sleepless nights. She had loved him in a way few ever could, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that a part of him would always belong to someone else. It wasn't that he didn't love Linda. He did. She could feel it in his embrace, in the way he depended on her, in the moments of tenderness they shared. But love isn't always enough when the past refuses to let go. Linda started noticing little things. The way Elvis would sometimes drift into silence after a conversation about Priscilla. The way certain songs seemed to take him somewhere else. The way his mood would shift after a visit from his ex-wife. She realized that he was a man caught between two worlds. He had the life he had built with Linda, filled with companionship and understanding. And he had the past he had shared with Priscilla, filled with history and unfinished emotions. And in the end, Elvis himself didn't seem to know where he truly belonged. This was the reality of being with a man like him. Loving him meant accepting that part of him would always be elsewhere. And for Linda, the question was, how long could she live with that? Because sooner or later, a woman who loves a man must ask herself, if his heart is split between two people, is it really yours at all? Elvis Presley was more than just a cultural icon. He was a man torn between duty and desire, past and present, love and loss. For Linda Thompson, loving him meant accepting the contradictions, the tender moments and the distant ones, the devotion and the ghosts of his past. But the truth was, Elvis himself was struggling. He loved Linda. He relied on her. He leaned on her when his world became too overwhelming. She was his sanctuary, his calm in the storm. And yet Priscilla never fully faded from his life. Somewhere deep inside him, Elvis held on to a version of love that no longer existed, but one he couldn't fully let go of. Maybe it was nostalgia, maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was something more. A longing for the life he had once built with Priscilla, the woman who had once been his wife, the mother of his child. Linda had seen it all. The moments when Elvis was fully present with her, and the moments when he seemed lost in a world of his own, a world where she could never quite reach him. And that was the hardest part of all, because loving Elvis meant understanding that a part of him would never belong to her completely. It meant standing beside a man whose heart was divided. It meant realizing that no matter how much she loved him, she might never be the only one he truly loved. And for a woman who had given her heart so completely, that truth was almost too much to bear. What would Linda do next? Would she stay, knowing she would always live in the shadow of another love? Or would she finally choose herself? For years, Linda Thompson had been Elvis Presley's rock, his caretaker, his closest companion. She had stood by him through the sleepless nights, the emotional highs and lows, the struggles he rarely let the world see. She had loved him with every piece of her heart. But in the end, love wasn't enough. Linda knew that no matter how much she gave, Elvis's heart was never fully hers to hold. A part of him was still connected to Priscilla, to a past he couldn't let go of. And so she made the hardest choice of all. She chose herself. In 1976, after 4 years by his side, Linda walked away. Not because she didn't love him, but because she knew she deserved to be loved completely. It was painful. It was heartbreaking. But it was necessary. Because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is let go of a love that isn't truly hers. Elvis Presley's story is one of music, fame, and larger-than-life moments. But behind the legend was a man who struggled with love, loss, and the weight of his own past. Linda Thompson's story is often overshadowed by the history of Elvis and Priscilla, but her role in his life was undeniable. She was there in his final years. She was the woman who cared for him when the world wasn't watching, and in the end, she was the one who had to walk away. But what if Elvis had made a different choice? What if he had truly moved on from Priscilla? Would his story and his fate have been different? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the life of the King of Rock and Roll.